I'm Lindsay Davis, coach and guide for aspiring creative visionaries who are tired of settling for the default life and instead are ready to create a life they are 100% in love with without giving up who they are. With me today for this creative conversation is my guest, Sophie Baystream. She's the entrepreneur and visionary behind SoulCircle. She previously owned and managed her own vegan community cafe, Nice Life, in the south of France for 3 years. She's created pop-ups in the French Alps and Prague, been guest chefing in Sweden, and working with yoga festivals in Monaco and France. At the moment, she is fully embracing her new life in romantic Prague, where she now lives. Sophie's passion for food started early, inspired by her parents, encouraging her to think outside the box by creating cooking games at home. For Sophie, it all comes down to food. Since they say we become what we eat, which is almost an understatement, Sophie sees food as linked to our lifestyle and our daily choices, connected to our spiritual approach, and connected to nature and the cycles of life. That's why she wants to inspire people to see the importance of how and what we eat. She believes that if we would all eat more consciously, it would be the catalyst of change that we want to see in the world. Looking forward to connecting with Sophie today. Currently, she just completed her studies on integrative nutrition. She's increasing her knowledge with raw food, herbal, and Chinese medicine, and learning how to grow her own food with an award-winning organic farm in Sweden. We'll hear more about this today, but her next project is her upcoming book release called Abundance, 21 Days of Creative Living. All right. Thanks for joining me today, Sophie. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. I'm really excited for inviting me.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about where you're located these days.
So I'm located in Prague at the moment, and I've been living back and forth here for 1.5 years. But yeah, I live in Sweden as well.
Cool. And I met you at a retreat not so long ago, and was introduced to you through your amazing food. I don't think I have ever eaten that way with so much love. How did you get into doing retreats?
So from the beginning, I've been fascinated by food since I've been a kid through my family. And I can go more into the details how that led me to what I'm doing now. But I was creating my own concept called Nice Life, which was a concept on the French Riviera, where I invited people to a sort of a cafe to feel home away from home. So that's where I started working a lot with food to kind of connect people. And I did that for 3 years. And eventually, I'm a person who loves challenge. So I was like, okay, so I want to continue this, but I still want to travel and meet new people and also have a balance with work life. So little by little, through kind of word of mouth, I got introduced to retreats and festivals. Mm-hmm. And that's how it kind of started organically, that I came into working with retreats. So it was through people I met, and they tasted my food and they introduced me to that person and so on.
Yeah. I love hearing this, because it's like such a natural way to go into it. And I really hear also just an admiration that you started something with your cafe, creating this experience, and then you didn't let yourself like just stay there, but you were open to a new challenge. And then really just following, the way I think of it is like breadcrumbs, like just following the next opportunities from a friend or a contact, and being willing to do it and just show up. So really seeing that for you too. Yeah. Awesome.
Exactly. I think it's me in a nutshell, basically, that, you know, I'd done that for 3 years, but I still wanted to grow more and I wanted to learn more. And I you know, you're in, like, you have two streets. One is like, okay, I'm going to settle and this is going well and I can continue doing this, but I still feel like I have more to learn and I want to do other things and grow in different ways. And so, you know, it's a scary jump to follow that, you know, challenge, but if you know that it makes you grow, that's what kind of makes me tick, you know.
Yeah, I love that. That's like the essence of living from passion. I know we've talked about this just a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah, following your heart. And tell me a little bit about maybe this background story. You sort of said I could go into it a little bit. Tell me a little bit about how you chose food. Like, why food?
So the way I see food is it's endless. It's endless of possibilities. For me, I see it like, if you can imagine a color palette with colors that you can create endless paintings from. So with food, you can create different flavors, different textures. You can go into different cultures of food. You can go into the health aspect of it, about the holistic part of it. And then you also have the experience part where you're sharing a meal with other people. You also connect it to nature, because where food comes from is from nature. So for me, it's like you can find richness in so many parts of it. So for me, as a creative person, it's kind of like endless, and you can never get bored. You know, and that's why I think like the retreat concept is perfect for that, because it's everything from organizing the events, you know, inviting the people, creating the atmosphere, connecting with what kind of food you will make, but it's all, the essence is the food, and it's just a circle around that. So for me, that's why I think it's just perfect for my kind of personality.
Yeah. All sorts of experimenting that you can do.
Yeah, it makes you continuously learn, you know, because you can go in so many routes through food to learn something new about life, about yourself, about nature, holistic medicine, mindfulness.
Yeah, and I think that's what actually, you know, aside from the delicious food and the space that you set, that's what really stuck out to me in getting to know you a little bit at the retreat, was like the playfulness with which you came to seeing your creative work with food, and the joy that you had for it, and just like this vivaciousness with no matter what you were doing. And I think we always connected really early in the mornings.
Yes,
I was drinking my coffee and you were getting the preparations together for breakfast. But even early in the morning, you know, we might have been a little more muted, just waking up, but you still had just that joy and vivaciousness. How do you keep that alive for yourself?
So throughout the years I've been doing this, I've really learned one big lesson is to be able to create and to give. You have to do that for yourself in your life, because, you know, whatever you're giving is like a reflection of how you're living yourself. And I feel like to be able to create, I have to fill myself with new inspiration, learn new things. You know, so like for instance, like today I went to learn about how to make flower arrangements. Other day I learned how to climb. I'm also using a lot of like creative visualizations and manifestations, and all of this is kind of creating new wiring in your brain. It's like a muscle. It's like a creative muscle that you're continuously training, and through that it's kind of like you're seeing new opportunities more often. So you have an ability to connect ideas more simply and just see them in front of you. And that's what I think, that I have to kind of keep on growing and training that muscle to always have this playfulness in my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're experimenting with ways that you can create a life for yourself outside of just what you do professionally, and how much that brings fresh life and fresh ideas and fresh playfulness into your work. I think sometimes when we're living from our passion, that's like the end all and be all because we love it so much. But then we forget that there's other things that we enjoy doing. And the more that we can, as you said, create life for ourselves and experiment and play and do what calls to us, whether it's climbing or flowers,
Exactly.
then that can only enrich what we're offering others. I love that so much.
Exactly. And and I think that's like how kids are, they're always like learning new things and, being curious. I think that's the key of being curious about life and wanting to figure out things and try, just explore, because if that dies, that's, I think, where you kind of get stagnated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the aliveness that, I thrive on. It's this continuous learning.
Yeah, I think you're right. That curiosity, that's like a superpower of like youthfulness and energy and always learning, when we can stay curious. And I also hear like in you, like a willingness to try things without it having to have a guarantee that it's going to be anything big for you. Like flower arrangements. If it's nothing except for that was really cool to do flower arrangements, then that's enough. And I think you're right. That's like we can lose touch of that from when we were kids, where kids would just like play with stuff or try new things, and they didn't have to like know how it was going to serve them or how it fit into the bigger picture. It was just fun. It was just fun for them.
Exactly, you're so right. And I think that you're onto something there, because I mean, adults in general, we're always thinking a lot, and we're always thinking about what's the end result of this, what's the purpose of this, and we forget about the main, source of it. It's just to explore and to play. And sometimes even people have these desires and talents inside, but they're so overwhelmed with thinking about, oh, what's this going to lead to, and I can't do that, and I can't do this, and actually it's all going to waste because it's just stuck inside. And I think that's a shame. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect or if you're going to do a mistake. There's no mistakes. It's just to play. And imagine someone who loves writing, but they're just like, oh, but I can't write a book, I can't make money on that, like, so I'm not going to write. Like, it's such a shame. Like, I think I meet a lot of people who are a bit like that, a little bit stuck in and overwhelmed, instead of taking a pen and a paper and just starting writing, just writing.
Yeah, I love that. So this begs the question, have you ever cooked something? Have you ever made something in the kitchen that turned out not well?
Yeah, I mean, like, coming back to the topic, like the challenge, like before, when I was working with my passion nonstop at this concept I created, I mean, I was exhausted, I worked all the time, and I was, it was going well and everything, but at the point in the end, I was really burned out. And it was one morning, I remember specifically, I was making a brunch. And normally I'd make brunch like 4 courses, and I'd had like 20 people, and I would, buy everything, cook everything, and serve everybody. And it was at that point where I think something went wrong with my pancake dough or something. And I just, I was so exhausted, I started crying, and it was the first time I was like, okay, this is not going to work, and I think that, that's the worst thing that can happen. If it doesn't work, you have to just find another solution. and it shouldn't stop you. But it's all about, balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you're really onto something too, with like having something not work out and that worst case scenario, it not stopping you, and then plugging back into curiosity to find another way, or adaptation. And I really believe more and more that's the secret to lasting resilience, is to stay plugged into those energies, rather than being really rigid and really in our heads trying to have it all figured out. Yeah.
I think it's a really good metaphor on that topic is recipes. So I'm kind of like have this hate love thing with recipes. So if you would compare it to life, it's like you have this kind of like list or box that you should have these ingredients in this certain amount. If you have that, you make it perfect, creation. But if you don't have this or you don't do that perfectly, you're gonna do it wrong. And there's where like I think food is really helpful, because it should be fun to cook. You should like just play with it and follow your intuition. And maybe recipes can be like a inspiration for you, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I think in life we're also very scared about making mistakes. But it's through this training of intuition that you'll find your own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember at the retreat, Sophie, you didn't really, because I asked you a couple ones. I was like, do you have the recipe for this? And you said, I don't really use recipes. And yeah, so I'm really hearing from what you just shared, like a recipe is like just a loose framework for you. It's just to get the ball rolling. And then you give yourself permission to go outside that box.
Exactly. And I think that what I do when people ask me about recipes and help, like I recently had actually some friends writing me on Facebook, and they're like, oh, we're gonna have this New Year resolution to cook more like vegetarian and so on. Could you help us? And so I have this chapter in the book I've been writing, where I've written down like the basic ingredients to have at home to always be able to make easy meals, healthy, easy vegetarian meals. And I think that that's kind of foundation, like have a base at home of ingredients, and then you can always feel free to play around with that, making meals. Because it's all about like using what you have and not making it too complicated. So rather than like being static in these recipes, use what you have and make the best out of that.
Yeah, and actually I do want to hear more about your book, but I have to ask, this is sort of about that story of the game that you would play with your family about using what's on hand. Is this okay? Can I ask you to share a little bit that story? That was just so cool, because I could see how much it played into your philosophy now.
I think that the book is called Abundance, and I think that comes originally from my family and the way my parents raised me. And symbolically, they made this kind of game at home, where at the end of the week, when there was not much left of groceries, they would say to us that, okay, so now we're going to play a game. We're going to be two restaurants. So me and my sister, well, I would be with my mom and my sister would be with my dad. And we had to come up with names of the restaurants. And one team would then invite the other two as guests to the restaurants. And they would made up like a 3-course menu. And we would have to like decorate the table and make a nice like menu written down. But the challenge was to use only what we had at home. And then the other team would like come and eat and kind of grade the food, the decoration, and so on. So that was a lot of fun, and it still stuck with me. And I think that kind of created this playfulness with food, and seeing my parents, experimenting with what they had. and it's still with me today. So
Yeah. I mean, when you told me that, I was kind of blown away because it was the very essence of abundance. Like whatever you have on hand is more than enough.
yeah,
And this idea that you can tap into your creativity and use what's on hand. That was so inspiring because I think we whether it's in the kitchen or in life, we we can tend, I think, as humans to fall into that trap of like, if only I had whatever, then I could do this, or if only this was an option for me. And even then getting into comparison, like, well, they're able to do that because they have, XYZ and I don't. And so I love this spirit of like, whatever you have on hand, you can create an amazing experience.
yeah. And it's like I said before, it's like a muscle. It's just like if you keep on doing it every day, eventually it just flows. It's like you're going to the gym. You're just like in the beginning it may be tough for a couple of days, but then you just get a hang of it, and you're just like, oh, feeling more confident, and you're like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's the power of food, that you can also find your inner abundance through the food.
Yeah, I love that. And so when you wrote the book Abundance, your book Abundance, was that what fueled writing that book, or what inspired you to actually sit down and write some of your philosophies and ideas? And tell us a little bit about that.
So it was a specific moment, actually. It was when I moved to Chamonix, to the mountains, because after I worked with this concept in Nice for 3 years, I wanted to have a break in just being nature and just kind of be. And it was from a day when I just realized, oh my God, I've been experiencing so much richness, like not just from this concept, but in my life and stories and through food and this sort of like, if I don't put it somewhere, it's just gonna be stuck in me. And it was this kind of like inspiration of, okay, I want to share this somehow and write it down, even if it's just for me. It's kind of like a treasure that I would always feel abundant having, like my own stories in a book. And that's kind of where it started, like this kind of like just instant inspiration, like, okay, I just need to like put it out there on a piece of paper and make it tangible, and it's just like a treasure for me. And then it kind of grew from there, where it was like, oh my God, like everything I've been doing so far is like connected with this topic about abundance, about using what you have, and the roots of it, it's about also, nature, about community, about working together, about mindfulness, and how we can live our daily life more creatively. And so all of these ideas kind of, it's like a process, like it just kind of tumbles around like this, and you don't really know, just like you said with your project, it's just like ideas for the moment, and then little by little it's like seeds that like kind of grow more and more towards one line, and that's how it came together.
Yeah. And I've heard other authors say this too, that they wrote a book for themselves and they didn't even care if it was ever like a bestseller or successful or anything. It was really for them to have something tangible to read and hold, and even going back and reading their own book later to be reminded of that mindset that they wanted to remember and those stories that they want to remember. I love that. And it again just emphasizes the point we were talking about earlier, where you said you're just following these inspirations and you don't know how it's really going to work out in the end. They're just seeds of possibility.
Yeah, and there's no like pressure like that you're gonna doing it for someone else, you know. In the end, if no one buys it, I'm still like proud of that it's mine. And I think it's also constantly, when I read it time to time, I have to proofread it a lot, but it's kind of my own teacher, you know. It's reminding me of my own lessons that I often need to be reminded of.
Mm-hmm.
And it also reminds me that, you know, no one can ever take away your stories or your richness that you already have. And I feel that that book is kind of reminding me of that. Like, whatever happens, like, this is my story and this is what I've learned, and, you know, it's treasurable for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I have to ask, is it in English?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. And, you know, maybe, I mean, it's very like magnetic for me. I might need to pick up a copy of that book. But who would you recommend it being for? Who would maybe enjoy reading that book?
Oof.
I sprung this question on you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I think that anyone that feels that they want to create that little spark in their everyday life, because it's called like 20 Days of Creative Living.
Mm.
And so, I mean, it's a book that you don't read straight through. You can if you want, but it's a book that you can use your whole life. So if you want to like have a little spark or inspiration for one day, you can read just one chapter.
Mm.
and I think that, I mean, anyone who wants to be inspired to live creatively, I wouldn't like limit myself to say a certain group of people.
Yeah.
It's for everybody.
For people looking to be inspired and who want to live creatively. Beautiful. Yeah.
And maybe get reminded of their inner abundance, because in the book there's a lot of like exercises as well to kind of bring back that creative energy in yourself. And sometimes we need like a little push or tools to reawaken that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's people who want to or need that reawakening, and that book would be maybe a good choice for.
Sounds amazing.
Really?
Yeah. Thank you for writing it down for yourself and then willing to share it with others so much. Yeah.
Well, it's seriously scary, but I mean, every day, like when I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, like, am I gonna have the courage to share this? You know, it's my words, because it's like so personal, you know, writing something and putting your own thoughts. It is really personal, very vulnerable to do. But like in anything, if you're not vulnerable, what are you going to learn from, and how are you going to connect with people?
Yeah. We could talk a whole nother topic on vulnerability, I think.
I mean,
I am curious. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm going to say the end thing, like the worst thing that can happen that it's judgments, you know, and people, there's always going to be people who are going to judge you and dislike it or like it. And I think that in myself, that's something that I probably need to learn then from doing this, to just be like, that's okay, you know, like this is mine, and people can have their own opinion, and that's okay.
Yeah, even another way that I really see you're training yourself. You're strengthening that muscle to be okay with you. And I think Brene Brown calls it belonging to yourself. Strengthening the muscle that no matter what judgments you get, you first and foremost belong to yourself. And I don't know, I really admire your willingness to play at that level and look at ways that you can practice that. And this being one of them, where it's really scary and you don't want to be judged and you don't want your stories out there, you know, maybe some days when you wake up, but you're willing to do it because that's what you really see, creating connection and real relationships and really making a difference for people.
Yeah, I guess sometimes you just have to kind of go towards things that scare you a little bit, because otherwise what's gonna make you grow? And it's like one of my best friends the other day, she just revealed to me that she's always been extremely scared of flying. Uh, and actually, like, she's a flight attendant because she wanted to learn how to get, rid of this fear, and I thought that was so inspiring. It's just like, just go. You have to have a little bit of fear to grow from something.
Yeah, I admire that. Okay, I have to ask. This was one thing that I really learned from you so much. I think every time I would talk to you, I learn. But you really did start a different trajectory for my relationship with food. And I don't know if you fully know that, but I know we talked about it a little bit. I came from, I've been eating quote unquote healthy for a while. But I had fallen into like always eating the same thing in the same way, and actually was growing to pretty much hate food. If somebody really asked me how I felt about it, nothing, is like, I felt nothing about it, or sometimes I would like not even want it, because it was just the same thing over and over. And like, this is what was healthy. This is what I'm going to eat. And I had lost a lot of like the joy or the connection to my food. And it was interesting from the very start, you created this whole experience of like the way that you set the table and the decorations that you brought in and the dishes that you used and the way that the food was presented and the textures that you chose and the temperatures that you chose, and every ingredient that you put in, there was a reason, because it was nourishing to the body in some way. And I remember you saying that you wanted your food to feel like love. And that completely changed the way that I thought of food. So, yeah, actually what came was like this ripple effect, like coming home and the way I would prepare meals for my family being a little bit different. Right? Like, just like putting together the nutrients and like, here we go, yay, food is fuel. It's not fun at all. And then even starting to intuitively make those choices to find more joy or find more love in my food. And, I guess in a way, like just transform and bring back that inspiration. So personally, thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, thanks for sharing. I had no idea that, but like, that's really like, for me to hear that because it's not about just this experience at the retreat. It is really about what you take home from it. And so for me to hear that, that's even more, powerful. And it really shows that you felt that it can make a difference with how you see food. And that's really amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
And so you started making like other foods, and like what happened?
Yeah, I will say I don't cook at your level, Sophie. But
Different.
yeah, and I think it was more like, instead of locked into, well, this is just the way it is, mindset of like going to the grocery store and this is just the way it is, I just get the same ingredients. There was this element of like, well, what would be more fun? What would be more fun to experiment with? What are the other spices that I can use? And also, I think tuning into, well, what season is it? What would really nourish my family right now? What are they needing? And we actually, for me, I mean, and I think the majority of people, we intuitively do know a lot, and we've picked up a lot of information about the nutrients of food. And I think it was just that reminder to slow down enough and actually tap into that, to where, you do know, like, in the winter, what would be more nourishing to you. You do know, what carrots are good for, or whatever. And it's easy to find out if you don't. But I think that's what has really shifted for me. And we do still have some boring meals. I will say, like, it's not always inspiring, but I think it was like, it's what got the ball rolling for incremental changes in the way that I looked at food and the way that I would prepare it, and seeing it as a vehicle for nourishment. And I think the word abundance is just a beautiful word for that.
But that's really great. And like what I really like is that you don't feel like overwhelmed, that everything has to change from that to that in like instantly. It's all about taking one step at a time, and like listening, like you said, about what you feel that you need. And I think that just that listening to your body and what's seasonal, and getting more in contact with the food, it's already starts. So
Yeah.
good on you.
Yay. Yeah. Well, thank you. What would you tell people who, I got the gift of your amazing cuisine at a retreat, and even not just the food itself, but the way that you prepared it and all of what you put into the experience. But what would you tell to somebody who's just starting out, and maybe maybe they're eating healthy, maybe they're not, but they've lost a lot of the joy that food can bring? Where would you recommend they start?
So always, often when I have retreats, I ask people the first question before we start eating. It's, what is food for you? And like you said, most people say, oh, it's just fuel. And they have this kind of like resentfulness feeling to food. And it's very interesting, because then from that moment throughout the retreat, they're eating the food and I'm kind of like explaining the way I see food. Little by little, I see this kind of curiosity spark. And the first day, it's like, not so much. But then the second day, it's like they start, because we often give them like a notebook in the beginning. They're like, what did you say that you had in that dish there? What did you put there? And how can I get that? And and even after the retreats, people write to me on social media, and they start to feel curious, and they see that they can be empowered to do it themselves. And I think that's like the main goal for me. It's not that they're going to this event and it's like super special that they can't make it at home. I feel like my mission is like really to tell people and show people that this is something you can bring home and make yourself. And as long as you have the basic ingredients, you can do, for instance, this or this, and also making an experience of buying the food. For me, I've almost stopped going to supermarket unless I really have to. But I try to go to a farmer's market. And most people are like, oh, but I don't have time, it's so complicated, blah, blah, blah. But, then I just say, well, I go there once every second week, and I buy loads of like vegetables, like non-processed food. I buy ingredients that last for longer, like potato and cabbage and all this. And then I buy the fresh foods that I know that I'm going to use quicker. And then, I'm all set. And then you have the base, the dry foods that you already have always at home. And so combining the two, that's where you like already have a base of creating meals. And what I also do is that I give them my Pinterest account, and I have this like huge collection of like food inspiration. So and it's all like vegetarian and healthy. So I tell, well, if you feel stuck, like you can just find inspiration through there, and play with that, and I think that's a good start to like kind of spark that curiosity in someone who's just seeing food as fuel, as a start.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so true. It's like, start where you are, start where you are, and then look at what you can do that inspires you, that feels doable. And it might be a little outside your comfort zone. But start there by like incremental steps.
Yeah, and I tell people also, one thing that's really easy also is to start with the breakfast. You know, like let's just say that if you want to create a change, the only thing you'll do is change your breakfast to start with. And in the book also I've written about the chapter called Morning Masterpiece. So basically it's about like how you're setting the tune for the day, and it's kind of celebrating yourself through the breakfast. So creating new ways from what you have, like new recipes to make it more interesting to wake up, basically. And then I give like simple ideas like chia pudding or different variety of porridge or a beautiful smoothie bowl, and you know, like small things that are easy to make yourself. And that kind of also eventually creates a snowball effect, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And I love what that challenge to just start with breakfast first, morning masterpiece. That already sparks like inspiration for me. So yay. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really do. Every time we talk, I always take away so much. I have to ask, because it seems like you just live with so much joy and playfulness. What do you find is like your number one challenge? Do you have challenges?
I'm not like some super person. I have my downtime. Yeah, I mean, like for me, it's I feel like I'm getting there more and more now this year and last year also, is this balance between giving and also giving back to myself. And I feel like now with the retreats, I have been able to create the balance from working intensively, because when it is a retreat, you work like, you know, 12 hours a day at least, and also before the preparation and so on. But I also have the rest time in between. So I can recuperate and, you know, take the time for me. And I think I've become better on that. That's been like one of my biggest challenges, I think. It's been like I've been just so drained from just like creating and creating and creating. But also it comes to a point where you like losing energy from that, because you're just creating. It's just like mass production kind of, and it loses the energy of what you're doing and the purpose of it. So I think that's been like my main lesson, to have the balance between, like, you know, nourishing myself to be able to nourish others. And then the other challenge, I think we talked about it before, is this, you know, you're kind of alone when you were, you know, creating your own kind of job, and you're responsible for your own time. And of course there's like moments where you're like, oh yeah, why am I not doing what everybody else is doing? It's so much like more comfortable and secure, and you know, you have days like that when you're like, oh my god, you know, and it's scary. But then you have days that just, you know, you're just like, I could not do anything else than this, you know, I could not. And I think it comes down to that, you know, you just feel it, you know, like it's just who I am, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And but you have to be strong in that, and I think that's the challenge, to kind of be strong with your own created life, you know.
Yeah, I really hit like being committed to the vision. And there's this element, I mean, we all do need to, in this world, make a living.
Yeah.
But there's this idea too that like we can make a living doing what we love. But even if we weren't getting paid, like you said, it's just who you are. Like there would be some way that would find its way out of you, even if you were doing something else to make money. But how amazing it is that this is also the path that you've chosen to make income from as well.
In like with anything, it has its start, you know, where you have to find ways to make money, and it takes a longer time maybe than just getting a job, you know, and getting paid. And it is a struggle to get there and to find ways to make it possible. But what I often tell people who have passions and they're just too scared to what they think. It's like, okay, I have this job, it's secure, and I'm just gonna, okay, I love something else. So the solution is that I'm gonna jump to the other one like this. And I'm just always telling them, what, why? Why don't you just start a little bit on what you love and try it out on the side and see where that takes you, but still have the security of a job. And that way, you know, like you'll just do what you love, and then the rest will, whatever will happen, but at least you're doing it instead of thinking about it, you know.
Yeah, that willingness to test, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that there is maybe a mindset where people feel like, well, in order to do what I love and make a living, I have to jump off the cliff, quit all my jobs. And there are people, to be fair, there are people that do that and it works for them. And I'd be the last person to say they shouldn't have done that. But that doesn't have to be for everybody. And if somebody wants to test it out, then just find, like you said, the smallest way that they can start testing it out. And it's almost like back to food. It feels like taste testing. Like taste test it and see if it's going to be all that for you. And if you want to continue or you want to do more, and then you can start to, you know, tip that ratio where you're doing it more and more and you're doing your other work less and less.
Exactly. And it's like, I see it like life is a little bit like a smorgasbord, if you know that saying. It's a Swedish smorgasbord. It's like you have this all different flavors and dishes, and you know, you want to taste them, because then you will know what you like and don't like. And I think that, you know, if you don't taste, how can you know? So I think that if people just have the courage to try out things more, it could, you know, create more joy for them as well.
Yeah. So much value in this conversation for people who are listening, by the way. But if that's all that they take away is like, how, if you don't taste it, how will you know? I mean, that's gold right there, whether we're talking about food or we're talking about life. That's huge. Yeah, taking that in.
Yeah, I guess it's just a way of seeing life, right? Like you only live once, and life is abundant, and you just have to want to taste different flavors and see what you like and don't like. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I hate to like wrap. I mean, I want to keep this going. But if you were going to recommend maybe a resource, and you can also recommend your own book, that's cool too. But any resource for people to really spark their inspiration or their willingness to taste, what would maybe just a resource maybe that's on your radar or that you've really found inspiring over the years?
I have so many.
No, it's a bad question.
Okay. Well, I mean, a good, like, I'm actually recommending sources in my book as well, because these are the sources that inspired me. So one book, though, that I really like is Big Magic. Mm-hmm. It's by Elizabeth Gilbert. Yeah. And it's all about creativity. That book really inspired me, and it just kind of resonated with how I think, and it's very fun as well to read. And I also follow, not at the moment, but there are times where I follow a lot of like inspirational speakers. They're, you know, online on YouTube and so on. I've liked a lot Alan Watts. I also like what's his name? Rudolph Smart. Rudolph Smart. Something like that. I forgot his name.
You can put it in the search box and something will come up.
But there I have a list of speakers and books that really inspired me, and about mindfulness and so on. But if one book that I would think about right now, it's Big Magic. I like a lot. Yeah,
that seems to be right in line of even some of the themes we've talked about today. a good book for creative inspiration? Like, and
Yeah, finding
a willingness to try.
yeah, exactly. It's I mean, it's just about those, like I always say also on the retreats, like we eat 3 times a day, right? It's something we all do, most of us, every day. And if you change those things that you do every day, those essential things, a lot can change in your life. And I think that for me, that's what's happened when I started eating the way I do. It just changed me on different levels, emotionally, mentally, and connecting with people. And that's where the heart is, I think. Finding those small daily things you do every day that you can do more creatively.
I love that. And I actually think the body can be in many ways the shortcut to changing at a deeper level, changing the brain, changing the way we think, changing those pathways and patterns. I found you found it through meals, and the body. I find that same type of energy when I practice yoga. That was my first start. And it changed the way that I move in my regular day, off of the mat. And it would start that ripple effect where we're willing to change other things. And almost like you said, it happens automatically. It takes you by surprise at times.
No, it's true. I mean, the mat is a reflection of where you are at in your life in the moment, you know, and whatever happens on the mat will also happen outside of the mat.
Yeah. And maybe the same for, intentional, intuitive meals. And when you're eating at that level, what happens at the table changes too.
What you talk about and everything and how it looks, is also the things you surround yourself with. Also, you become what you eat, but I mean, you can also train your mind through focusing on words, like if you would write down words that you want to fill yourself with, that's also a way to train your mind and read that regularly. So there's all sorts of ways to start thinking more creatively.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation today. I know that I'm taking away a lot. I'm confident that other people will as well. And I so appreciate you budgeting the time and showing up here and really willing to just share what's on your heart and your background, some of your stories. So appreciated.
Well, I'm really grateful that you hold the space for this, and it's kind of powerful to share your own philosophy and having someone listening like that. So for me, I'm taking away a lot too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.